headed into retirement, but now you have 40 hours a week that you need to fill. How do you do that without driving your spouse crazy? Today, we're going to talk to Jody and Reg Howard about their best-selling book, Choosing Each Other Every Day, so that you can learn how to get your marriage in the shape it needs to be so that you can go into the golden years as happy as you started before. Welcome to Retirement Spy Studios, where we share experiences and a collaborative platform for those entering phase 2 of life and are ready to embrace this chapter with gusto and an attitude of carpe diem. You can find out more about us at www.theretirementspy.com or send us ideas and topics to hello@theretirementspy.com. Today, we're joined by Jody and Reg Howard, who are the best-selling authors of Choosing Each Other Every Day. They also have their own podcast named accordingly the same. Reg is a retired Navy captain, served almost 30 years. Thank you for your service. And Jody is a Reiki master and teacher, and together they have 4 children and have been together for 35 years. We in retirement have to have some new skills as we go through marriage happily ever after. And so we're here to talk to them today about some of those things that may be important for our audience. Guys, tell me, your book, your podcast had some inspiration at some point. Where did the inspiration come from, both the podcast and the book?
Well, first of all, thanks for having us. We really are happy to be here. And the book came from the podcast. The podcast started first, and it was kind of a interesting way to get to a podcast. We actually were going to celebrate our 30th wedding anniversary, and we had a vision of going. I had a vision of going,
which means I had a vision
of going to Italy and renewing our vows. And then 2020 hit, right? And COVID hit and lockdown hit. And there wasn't going to be a lot of traveling abroad for a while in our world. And so we found ourselves, I'm not even sure exactly. I had a few people who over the years had said to me, have you and Reggie ever thought of starting a podcast? Because we're always talking to each other, and in our household, our kids always say how much, we have this playful banter. We're just continually, whether it's big stories, little stories, whatever it is, we're constantly in this conversation mode. And so I came to him and I said, hey, since we're not going to Italy, do you want to start a podcast?
And
what a great COVID thing to do.
Oh yeah, for me it was one of those. So this is one of those initial kind of like you're setting up the how do you continue to be together and stay together and enjoy each other. I gave up the word no to her many years ago. So it's just a yes. What exactly does that mean for me? So what is my requirement so I know what I'm saying yes to? Because what I found is it's awesome when you're in that that zone of yes, like figuring out, okay, how does this work for both of us? So it's never no, I don't want to do it. It's like, okay, podcast, what does that mean? And for me it was perfect because she says you don't have to do anything. And you've been married as long as I have. What does anything mean? And so we got to, and it meant, yeah, you just have to show up. I'm going to tell you what we talk about right before we get on air, and all you have to do is talk. And I'm like, no prep, no. She's like, nope. And I'm like, perfect. Yeah, you just want me to talk. I can do that. So she made it palatable for me, which is kind of that give and take in a relationship. She wants to do something. I want to make her happy. She gives me the means to do that in a way that won't drive me crazy. So it works for both of us.
You just gave the secret to marriage. If everybody's listening here, you just said it right there. Do what she says, whatever she wants to make her happy, just say yes. Unfortunately, for those who know the Enneagram, my Enneagram is I'm the challenger. So whatever we have in our marriage, I'm always like, we could do this a little bit better. Hey, I'm not sure about that. Oh my gosh. The things that we learn over 30 years plus of marriage.
I'm an Enneagram 9 with an 8 wing. So I get your challenger aspect. And so I hear that, but I think it's how we approach so many things, where it is kind of like, rather than immediately saying no, it's a space of, okay, my partner's interested in that. I don't know if I want to do that, but let's see, what would it possibly look like, rather than just immediately going to, that is not of interest to me, sitting down and watching, I don't know, hours and hours of a particular sports game that is not my jam. But I'm like, all right, he wants to do this. How could we sit down and maybe do this together? So it is that give and take that you learn to continue to share and open up to each other over the years.
Well, I always tell people, I think it works out that way for us because we've had this kind of from the very beginning. I'm a Southern boy, grew up in Georgia. We believe in spanking. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I remember our first child, Jody's like, we're not hitting our child. And I was like, okay, I'll give you the first one, but if she turns out to be a little, we're spanking the rest. And she's like, sounds good. So my compromises, even from the very beginning, have always worked out well because, of course, the first child was a blessing and it was wonderful. And we found other ways to modify behavior. But we've always been in that space of, okay, we're willing to go here together, and then working through the specifics so it works for both of us.
It's funny. We Southern guys, I remember we started with the dog before we had our one and only super son, and it was the rolled up newspaper with the dog, and she's like, you're not going to hit our dog, you're not going to hit our child if we ever have a child. So it's a Southern thing, I guess, but our wives usually know us a little bit better. But let me jump into the book, Choosing Each Other Every Day. Tell me some about the core principles. We talked about how it kind of came about, but kind of tell me about the book and some of the core principles that our audience might need to know about.
Well, I would tell you probably the title gives it away. Choosing each other every day. We're both firm believers in you make a choice every day that it's either making your relationship stronger or detracting from your relationship. Now, we've been together for 30 years. We're different people. I have more than my fair share of poor choices that she dealt with, and we found a way to get past and do all those things. Those were choices. I made a bad choice. She made the choice to, okay, let's work through this. But each day you're waking up to a new person, because no one wakes up the same and they're the same person they were the day before. So you make that choice of, am I making decisions and creating habits that are nurturing this relationship or detracting from this relationship? And you go together making those choices of, when you do fail, when you do come up short for me, okay, how do we work past that? But you have to make a choice to do that, or you could build a wall that you can never get over. That's kind of
I'll say this anecdotally, and I don't pass judgment on people whose marriages haven't been as fortunate as ours to work out as long as they have. Sometimes people move on, but the people I'm running into at our ages in retirement that are single aren't as happy as the ones who really decide to work harder in their marriage, and they're living different lives. So kudos once again to what we're advocating here and what you guys have done, because it is about learning as we grow, right?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I think that choosing each other for us also, like we were saying in the beginning, looks like that space of curiosity and approaching each other with a space of, okay, that's interesting to them. Let me explore. Or, wow, that was an interesting choice he just made, and rather than judging it or over analyzing it, even, it's kind of that space of, how do we choose to get back to a common ground, to understanding each other, to creating grace and space for each other, because I've done plenty of things also that have required that. And so allowing that continual space of growing, like you're saying, and that doesn't mean every moment of every day is just all rainbows and butterflies.
It is for me.
It's not for
not
me.
So much for her. But for me, yes, not so much.
But trusting that that's part of the process, right? And that's part of the fun of learning how to get through these things together, and looking at each other and being able to say, I've seen you at your lowest, I've seen you at your worst, I've seen you at your most frustrated, and I still choose you. I still choose us. And the other big thing about choosing each other, though, we've learned is that we also have to start with choosing ourselves in that space, and how we feel about ourselves, and the time we take for, whether it's self-care, whether it's our own interests, are a huge part of being able to then have our cup filled enough to be able to say, oh, I actually have the patience for this in my relationship. I actually have the time and space and awareness, because I've been taking care of me all along and not just running on empty completely.
And I'll tell you, Duncan, go ahead.
No, please.
No, I was just going to say, and I'll tell you, one of those, what she's kind of hitting on is that personal growth, and we all grow at different rates, especially when you start at different rates. I always like to tell people, most men, we're still children. Most women, you said you guys had one super son. Well, I bet your wife would say I had two. One was him and one was you, that she's had to raise, and like Jody's had one extra kid having to raise me. But it's those, you grow at different rates, right? And it's that curiosity piece of, okay, because Jody really has been the leader of a lot of the self-examination, self-awareness, getting to know, the Enneagram, all these kind of human. She's been like and I made a choice. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to stay curious about this, and I'm going to join her in this journey, as opposed to, I don't know what do people like to call it, not woo-woo stuff you're doing over there, but I'm going to stay over here with my football and baseball and stay in that world, and that's how you kind of grow apart. And one of the things I like to say is, what are we doing to create those memories together, as opposed to I'm creating memories and she's creating memories, but they don't connect.
I knew I'd love to get together with you guys. We're kindred spirits. Gosh, you should meet my wife. I'm telling you, we're such kindred spirits. Two things that are coming out of this I think are important. I love the word you used, Reg. You said curious. So it's easy to choose to be mad at something your spouse does, but a better way to look at it is, let's be curious about that. You did something to really make me angry. Like, instead of being volatile, which I can be and have been, because I haven't grown up yet. I think you hit maturity at age the day you die. But you also said something, Jody, that I think is important too, is a lot of the curiosity or the lack of curiosity when you lose your temper is not working on yourself. Your cup's empty, and you need to be able to have self-reflection to be able to grow in order for the relationship to continue, right?
Absolutely. And that is, again, that space that we always come back to. When I'm feeling really frustrated with him, I have gotten to a space where I can pause and go, wow, why is this triggering me? What is it that's happening within me that he's reflecting back at me? Because we're our greatest mirrors, we're each other's greatest teachers. And obviously we're all each other's teachers, but when you choose to stay in a relationship like this for this long, we are each other's teachers, and we have chosen to learn from each other again and again and again and again and again and again. And so rather than being like, I can't believe he did this again, it's like, wow, what am I still getting to work on? What do I still get to? What is my lesson that shows up in this? Which isn't always the funnest thing, because it's a lot more fun to tell him all the things he's doing wrong and all the ways it's making me
and closer to the truth.
But it allows a space of self-reflection and growth. And I feel that that is one of our, continual choices, is that we continue to want to learn and grow with each other in all sorts of ways.
And I'll tell you, it's a difference in what she just said there on the whole. You learn, you're taking some responsibility in what's going on and doing a self-evaluation, which to me is very different than, it's your fault, I'm blaming you, and I have no culpability, responsibility. It's that piece of learning. It's like, yeah, this is some of his crap, but what can I do? Taking the time to do that instead of just going, it's them, it's them, it's them, it's them. Because I'm one of those believers that everything that happens, you have some culpability in that. What is that? And it may be a very small, like Jody and ours. I'm usually the 98% responsible, and she's the 2%. But there's that 2% in there. But it's that kind of thing of how we walk and evaluate.
You said something. There's a friend of mine who had a great quote I heard a few weeks ago, and I've lived it as my mantra now. It may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. And this is advocating marriage. It's say, okay, you're going to be wrong, or it may be you're not wrong, but guess what? You got to work it out regardless of who's right or wrong. And I think this all gets to a lesson of humility, right? To have a good relationship, you've got to be able to look internally and across the table and just say, all right, I'm going to be humble here. Gary, I'm Reg, I'm sure you're probably like, yeah, we're 98% of the time we're wrong. And that's fine. But if we can have that humility, it opens up a book through that curiosity that relationships can continue to evolve.
Agreed. It really is that piece of just knowing, what is my part in this? And I always look at that. What is the thing I like to tell people? I assume, or I could be wrong. I entertain the thought that I could be wrong. Now with my kids, I tell them I entertain the thought I could be wrong, which proves I'm wrong, because I'm never wrong. But I will at least entertain that thought, and it's that piece of just going, I'm going to entertain the thought that I somehow had something to do with this as well. What was my little piece in this? What did I do to maybe drive them into that lane that I could do better in the future? How I asked the question, how I proposed it, whatever it may be. But it's like, what is that? I'll assume, I will entertain the fact that I could be wrong and approach it from that, as opposed to approach from, no, I'm completely right. And I think you come up with better answers one way than the other.
Well, and I think there's something really freeing to the fact that you don't always have to be right. Releasing the need to prove why you're right all the time. That can be really exhausting if you're in a relationship where you're constantly proving why I'm right, why I did this, why I didn't do that. And that letting go of the need to prove to each other, because there's so many instances where we are technically both right, and so many times that we find ourselves we're saying the exact same thing. Well, we're saying it differently.
But
we're getting to the same point, and we're just saying it so differently because of things like you said, our Enneagrams and all these different factors that make us unique. So we're ultimately, and when we get to that point and we realize we're like, basically we're always on the same side. We pretty much always are. We're just coming at it from really different angles, which is something you can look at as exciting and interesting to be like, wow, that I would have never gotten to the same place from the way you got there. But you can appreciate that in your partner rather than it being like, I need to prove my way was the only way to get to this point, because it never.
Isn't it funny how you can get wrapped around an axle, and at the end of a lot of painful dialogue, you're like, we're talking about the same thing. We're just coming at it from different angles, and you're like, well, that was exhausting. Can we do this without as much effort the next time? Right? Hey, question. Y'all both have talked openly. Did you see where I threw that Southern y'all in there? You both openly talked about love evolving over time. How has that evolved as you've gotten into our older age or into retirement? Is it the empty nest when the kids are gone, and your kids may still be at home? I don't know, but tell me about the evolution of going from marriage with kids to older age towards / retirement, and what changed? How has relationship changed during this period?
Well, for me, a lot of it changed when he did retire from the Navy and he was suddenly home a lot more than I was anticipating him being home. And he then did go back out into the workplace. And like you said, phase 2 and phase 3, and he's been doing a variety of different things. But that initial window, I think you took 6 months off.
Yeah.
And that's the longest he had been home, it felt like, in our lifetime. So that.
Yeah, because I was a Pentagon worker where I would go in at 4 o'clock in the morning and I would be back home at 7 or 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So it was like, hey, a couple hours, love you. And then start the whole thing over, Monday through Fridays. So yeah, I was home and present
a lot. It was, I mean,
were the kids gone, Jody? Had y'all already been empty nesters?
Some of them
at this time.
Some of them were gone. We have 4 total, and 2 of them were out of the house, and 2 of them were home. And we have one daughter with significant special needs. She has cerebral palsy, so she'll always be home with us. But our youngest she's a sophomore in high school, so we still have a couple of years before she's flown the nest. So it was really an interesting time for me to logistically be in space with him all the time. And he's high energy. He's very loud. And I like a really quiet, serene, I'm an Enneagram 9, peaceful home all the times.
I'm a 3.
And he's an Enneagram 3. So
hardcore.
Yes. Right there explains it. So, but having that information at that time, thankfully, I did know our Enneagrams, and that helped me so much to be like, wow, why can't he just sit down for a minute? Why is he already looking for the next thing to do and the next thing to do, and is so focused on hard work and productivity? And that just doesn't compute in my brain. But knowing that about him, again, allowed me to go, okay, this is how he's, hardwired. This is how he's shown up here. And it created, again, that grace and space for us to be able to be coexisting in our house together.
I think the important lesson is, I love you keep bringing up Enneagrams. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, people call it woo-woo type stuff, but it's really fascinating. It's, I'm a different program, a different time. We'll talk about that. But it's simply knowing your personality types of your mate. And the reality of what we're talking about here is, you haven't been around each other 40 hours a week. If you've got 2 spouses working in 2 different places, or spouse at home taking care of the kids and somebody's working, what you find is you haven't been around for 40 years or 40 hours a week, and all of a sudden you are. There's a strong need for everybody to represent their own individuality and doing the things they like to do without overlapping with each other all the time. And the biggest thing I see in retirement is the spouse comes home and, honey, I'm home. And 40 hours and they're bugging. And the other spouse says, look, cowboy, I've got things I've got to do. I've got my own plan. I've got my own career. I've got my own life. And the lost retiree that comes into retirement without a plan, without an action plan to say, here's how I'm going to fill that void, there's stress on the marriage.
Yeah.
Well, one of the great things that he did, though, was he did, and it reminded me also from years when he would deploy and come back, and we learned that he had to re-enter kind of our atmosphere rather than us changing everything because suddenly daddy's home. Because the reality was we had been living 6-7 months without him, as challenging as that was, and happy he was home, but he didn't suddenly just come in and try to like right the ship in the way he thought it needed to be. He eased his way in, he assessed the situation, he kind of took care of things. And one of the big things for retirement, he realized, was laundry. I could really use help with laundry. And he took over the laundry, and it was the best gift he's ever given me. Our laundry is done and folded and ready to be put away. It's amazing. And I, to this day, he's taken that on, and I love it
It's
so
an
much.
example of the efficiency I bring to any process around the house. There were a lot of inefficient. You can do it that way.
Yeah.
It's just not very efficient.
Laundry was not my jam, but I was the one who was most often home and therefore doing it. And he also, though, once he gets a project, he likes to then take it on. And I said, I love it. Take it on. And I don't care how you do it. And
create a process, have the steps in place. Like everybody knows the process. It all goes very smoothly and efficiently, and we move on to the next project.
Absolutely.
So do y'all have revelry in the house and other taps at night when you go to bed?
Our friends used to laugh at us on vacation because we would have family sync sessions. So before Disney, before anything, especially having a special needs child, there's extra pieces and parts that go on. And so I got frustrated that everybody was just kind of doing it. And I was like, no. Okay, every morning, let's get together. We're going to talk about what you're doing today, what you're doing today, what you're doing today.
On vacation.
On vacation, and we lock it in. So throughout the day, there was no miscommunication. There was nothing going. So it is. That's how I work. That's not how she works. So this being home and coming home from deployment or the permanent deployment was really just a case of me going, okay, how do I fit into her world and cause the least amount of impact? And I found the basement to be a very nice place. It's very cool down there to just kind of disappear for a while. Kind of like what you were saying before. Hey, I got a thing, I got a system, I'm going this. As I going, okay, I'm not going to get into that at all. You go do you. I'm just going to disappear for a while. But, finding those different roles and those different ways to, because you do want to spend more time together and at the same time, you don't want to intrude upon what they've been doing and trying to do and are still trying to do in their development of work projects and everything else. So kind of fitting in was really.
So let me ask a question. How can our audience who, let's just say they're 5 to 7 years away from retirement, what can they start to do to prepare before retirement to kind of avoid the conflicts that happen with the daily routine changes?
That's a great question. I think just being aware of who is doing what routine, just even having that awareness in the beginning is helpful. And then maybe even having conversations around what does that, because I don't think I'd ever said to him how much, or maybe I did, I despise doing the laundry. Like for me, that was just something. I enjoy cooking dinner. I enjoy some of the other activities, the household chores, if you will. And cleaning. He's really great with helping me clean. So being able just to be vocal about the things that I'm like, just around the household, these are the ways that you can be more helpful, or these are the things that really feel like my plate is just overflowing when we add one more load of laundry in. Having those conversations. And so whether or not couples want to start that even before, kind of try it on and give it a little baton passing before the big day comes.
I would say the conversations.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of time, because even from the very beginning, I don't come across as it, but I'm a very needy person, especially when it comes to her. And so, sharing her with the kids was always one of those like, hey, listen, they're going to grow up. They're going to come home one day and say, I just love him. I just love her. And they're gone. And meanwhile, you focused on them at my expense. And now you're going to come running back to me. And I'm going, no. You had no time for me the last 15, 20 years. Now you want me back because I was like, no, remember, in the end, I say that jokingly, but the point was, in the end, it's going to be me and you. And so we need to make sure we are taking care of us this entire time through the kids, through the work, through the whatever it may be? How do you find time? So I would tell you in that 5 to 7 time frame, one of the things that we really started doing a lot was making sure we made time for those date nights. Make sure we had, what was it, wabi sabi that we used to do every Monday night, where we would just like go upstairs, close the door, do not come, do not knock, and we would just sit and we would talk. And some of these things just naturally come out as how we're going to conduct and be with each other by just taking that time to just have us time, to have, togetherness time, where we would go do a weekend together, or we would go do whatever, and we would plan those things and get family to come, or sitters that we could trust, or that kind of thing. But really planning for that together time in those last 5-7 years, because we knew with our career, I should say, it was going to go one direction or another. And one was I was going to continue and work even harder. And one was going to be I was going to retire and we were going to go down this road. And we wanted to make sure we were connected. And those conversations and those dinner dates and those, the Friday night dinner dates at home, where it's like, okay, kids, lock yourselves in the room. And when they couldn't, we put the locks on the other side of the door and we locked it for them. But we had that time together to have those conversations, so that it wasn't such a huge communication transition when all of a sudden I'm around and it's like, hey, we kind of put that foundation in place.
You said something important. It is about communication, but I heard somewhere in there that you have to acknowledge your new roles. So one spouse has been the breadwinner 40 hours a week. This is what I did. And so now when they no longer have that responsibility or the need for that responsibility, there's a void that they have to fill. But guess what? You can really relieve your partner when you come home and say, you know what? I can take on the laundry now. I mean, to keep looking at your spouse saying, you've been doing this all the time, why do I need to step in and do any of it now, is not very thoughtful. And so what a great lesson right there. I mean, I imagine, Jody, you would say just the idea that Reg does laundry now is huge. And a part of your busy day that you're doing, it's a gift that you're giving to your spouse that you don't think twice about. You can be resentful to say, hey, look, I never had to do laundry. Why do I have to do it now? Well, guess what? Because you've got the time. Why wouldn't you? You love your spouse. And doing that, your spouse is going, oh my God, you have no idea what it is that you've taken this off my plate.
Exactly. Yeah, so true. And I think other things, like for Reggie, he also found interests in other activities to do, like nonprofits and whatnot. And so that was part of what became his new role. And it became something that we wanted to do. And that foundation started to get laid also before he went into full retirement, and thinking and knowing himself and knowing that he does like to have activities going, not just, yes, he'd be able to spend more time in the house and with the kids and whatnot. But he also knew whether he was going to jump back into the workforce right away or not. But he also knew he wanted to do something to be giving back, because being serving in the military for so long, service was important to him. So that was foundation that he started to lay before he fully retired, so that he actually did have something to also feel purpose filled in his day, rather than just suddenly looking around the house going, what am I doing? What's happening? What are you doing? Where it still created his own time for himself, in addition to us having more time together.
Yeah, and it really is that, what is it that brings me joy at the heart of things? It's like I've had a lot of friends of mine who retired, and I'm just going to golf all the time, and I'm just going to do these things. And after a while, they're like, well, this is no fun. I was like, well, I could have told you that, dude, as bad as you golf, I could have told you that wasn't going to be fun. But they miss something with purpose. And then you try and find it maybe in the house, and that you're stepping on toes. It's like, but that part of that prep, is, okay, what do I want to be doing, spending my time? Some people say they don't want to work, but then they really end up working. It's just doing it in a different kind of way, because that's what they find purpose in. And it may be a mentoring, or it may be a, whatever, consulting, or maybe whatever it may be. But, really kind of trying to figure out, what is it that is going to bring me joy and help me fill my time in a way that I feel I'm contributing, and I'm being helpful and being productive when I get rid of that 40-hour a week gig. And a lot of those guys, they're working a lot longer than 40 hours every week, but everything they're doing is something they find joy in and something that means a lot to them, and so they don't feel like they're working at all. And so it's a good, that's another one of those, if I went back 5 or 7 years and said, hey, how would you prepare? A lot of that was, what am I going to do with that time? You know,
An important question really comes up about how important it is for each partner to maintain a sense of individual purpose in retirement. Probably more so with you, Reg. You've got this big void from that. But Jody, even you, I know you're a Reiki master. I know you've got other things going on, book, podcast, and everything else. Did you guys ever get together and say, okay, we've got a new jump rope here. How are we going to play this jump rope to the point where Reg says, I'm going to do this. And Jody goes, that's stupid. Don't do that. It is about your individuality, but you've got to have some degree of communication about, okay, how are we going to work at this in our retirement and how can we have our individuality? Have y'all had these discussions? Is there conflict with this, or it is healthy, isn't it?
It is. We definitely both have each had our individuality that we've been able to maintain, and we can be a checks and balance system for each other. And that's kind of what I hear you saying, is that sometimes, like, let's say, for example, Reggie was doing this nonprofit work, which he enjoyed, and he's on multiple boards, but one board in particular was taking a lot of his time and energy, and he was almost approaching it like a job again. And I would have to sometimes say, hey, remember, you are a volunteer, you are a very dedicated volunteer, and the level of work, because again, coming from the military work ethic, which is you just don't quit until the day is done, you just, it's nonstop. And it would be like, wait a minute, and so we would sometimes, that would actually become a bit of a little conflict when I'd be like, wait a minute, you're retired now. It's not a yes to everything and everybody that this organization wants you to be a part of. And it's an amazing organization, and we both fully support it, and we can have boundaries within it. Yeah. And so that was something I think that was also kind of the other side of him finding that balance for himself, because he was such a dedicated worker, volunteer, employee, you name it. And that was a tricky kind of space to navigate.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those too. And what is that vision that you all have for this time, in your life? Because you get to retirement age, and you don't have quite as much gas left in the tank as you once did when you were in your 20s. You're like, oh, I got plenty. You're down to your last 20, 30 years rolling around out there. It's like, how do you want to spend that time? And one of the big kind of drivers for everything we do is we want to be spending as much of this time together. And if anything we're doing is detracting too much from that, yeah, we're not doing that. And it was those kind of having those conversations of going, hey, Reggie, what are you doing here? It's like, oh yeah, you're right. Let me pull back, because it was, we spent almost 30 years of, there was somebody else in the room with us, if you will, or in the house with us, where it was like, hey, honey, I got to go because they need me. And I know this is a sacrifice on our part, but these sailors, they need me, and I'm gone. And she understood that. Now, understanding and liking are two different things, but she understood that, and that was a commitment we made together. Now we're in this, our commitment is to each other, which again, what does that look like? And it's the spending the time, it's the going places, it's the doing, creating memories together. That's the priority. Everything else has to fit around that now. So that's another kind of piece of that, a layer of that. What do we want retirement to look like?
Well, y'all have had such great experience through your books, and I know you've talked to other couples, and I hear the comment of reinventing ourselves or having a restart with marriage in retirement. What does that look like when somebody says, hey, we need to reinvent our marriage, or your spouse says, you know what, we need a restart? What does that look like?
Well, I think the reinvention is something we've kind of been talking about, that if little by little you've been focusing on each other and continuing to pour into each other, it's more, for me, rather than a reinvention, more of an expansion. I think that's what we have felt, that it's like we've been, the little things that we've always kind of thought, oh, we would like to go have a lunch date together, or sit and have morning coffee together. Or, I would be able to take the lead more on my kind of travel and work stuff, because he was in a position where I could count on him being home for the kids and doing things that needed to be done. So for us, it was just kind of shifting and massaging it just a little bit to be able to be like, wow, we can actually expand more into what we've always wanted to do. And so it didn't necessarily feel like a reinvention, or if like you're kind of like saying phase two, or kind of like, wow, this can look like more than we ever anticipated and more than we ever expected it to be. and what are the resources that we can lean into, and just having him available after having him in the Navy for 30 almost years was a huge bonus for me, because there were so many things that it opened up for our schedule, and especially having a daughter with significant special needs that needs extra care for wherever things are, pieces, parts moving, for sure.
And I would tell you, when I look at it, and I look at, because we have friends, and we've got so many good friends from so many different phases, and we see everybody at different phases of their relationships. And a lot of that is the, both partners kind of going, when you talk reinvention, or what do we, I hear that more as, what do we want our relationship to really be, no matter what it's been for the last 10, 15 years? What do I want it to really be for these next 10, 20, 30, 40 years? What do I want that to look like? And your partner being willing to go on that journey with you of, what do we want this relationship to be and look like? Because like I said earlier, you wake up every day to a new person. You go to bed with one, you wake up with the other one, and you're like, okay, to me, the greatest challenge is, and how do I make that person still want to be with me? This new person I woke up, how do I motivate them? So every day is a new challenge, because it's, how do I make decisions? How do I do things that are motivating this individual to stay with me? And it's not, I don't have 35 years worth of credit built up. It's like every day is new. And so what I see a lot of times in relationships and partnerships that are working are those two individuals who are going, hey, this is where I am. Okay, this is where I am. This is where we want to get to together. This is what I need from you. This is what I need from you. Okay, let's go. The ones I see drift apart are the ones that's like, no. I am who I am. You knew that when you married me. I've been this way for 30 years. I ain't changing. Why should I change? And the other partner's like, no. I've moved. I've grown. I'm not that girl, or I'm not that guy that I was at 22. This is a new me, and this is what I want this relationship to be. Are you going to be the partner I need you to be? And I am who I am. That's on you. You.
That's a recipe for disaster, right there.
Exactly. So that reinventing, but going more, both of you being willing to do what it takes to be the partner of that new person you woke up to this morning.
Let me ask you a question. Are you finding marriage, the challenges with marriage, money can always get into a marriage and create havoc. In retirement, as you're hitting this stage of life, is money still a factor? Is money more of a factor now because you're not necessarily bringing it in, you're living off a pension, so to speak? How does money interplay with marriage in retirement?
You want to take that?
Well, I just think we're such a perfect couple. I like to make it, she likes to spend it. So it makes for a great partnership because, at times she'll go, I'm going to challenge you to make more.
I love it.
But I will tell you, for us, money has always been, we are two different money archetypes. I like to get it. I like to squirrel it away. And she's like, why are you squirreling away? We might need it one day. Okay. That day is looking like when we die, because you're just trying to hold on to this thing like nobody's business. But, it's what it always helped us was being that military piece where when I would leave, she would take over the money, the paying the bills, doing all the stuff, which gave her a much better understanding of where we financially were at any given point in time. Now, one of her great joys is upon my retirement, or I think it was just when I retired, I took over the books again.
That's not my favorite thing to do.
After officizing it, I think that's a word. We're gonna make that a word. Officizing it. It became one of those. Now she has a healthy respect for our financial stuff, and she understands it. She don't want to deal with it, but she understands it. She knows we can have conversations, and it's always been a point of just us discussing. And I think she helps me release, because I like to hold on. And making those memories sometimes requires releasing, that Disney cruise, and you're spending. And for me, it's like, we just went to Disney. Do we need to go on a Disney cruise? I was like, did you see your children's faces? Yes. Would you pay anything? Yes. Okay. And release. But I think for us, it's always been a healthy conversation back and forth, and understanding kind of, we don't think about it the same, but I think we've come to a very cohesive methodology of how we like to spend and do and what we're going to hold and when we're not and those kind of things. So I think for us, I can see how it would be a very challenging situation if we hadn't had all these years of kind of working through how we do it, that we can have healthy she knows like right away if a big chunk of money goes out, I'm going to be sad. I'm just going to be sad. And she just
But it's natural.
go ahead.
When you're in retirement, you've spent all your life making money so that you don't have to work anymore. And so when we get to the point where we've gotten to that place and money's going out the door, it doesn't feel natural. So that I can understand that. And Jody, I'll empathize with you. My favorite father-in-law, my only father-in-law, is an Enneagram 9, and he just had a great expression whenever money came up with our relationship. He goes, "Hey, just don't worry about it. Just go get some more of it." I never understood that, but I was like, "Okay, just go get some more."
That's exactly how my motto is. There's always more. Money comes, money goes. And the difference, like you're saying, though, is when you're, especially in the military, there's such a significant way that, money
Every 2
came
weeks.
in and the way we would save and the way we would spend. And it was very defined. And yet then when we're down to this retirement space, I'm like, remember the reason we had saved for 30 plus years was so that now we can start to, so it is a shifting of mindset and a shifting of gears, that it's not just about making money, even though money still comes in and money flows. But the whole reason we work so hard to save and actually went without a lot of things for many years was for the day when we could then say, exhale, let's go on the Disney cruise. We have done our due diligence. The money is there. Let's enjoy it. And but it does feel a little unnatural, like you're saying at times, when you're like, well, I don't have a set, 9 to 5 showing up every single day in my life. But we have found other ways of wanting to continue to, have money come in. And that's been another exciting thing about retirement, is whether it's a speaking gig, right, that Reggie does, or different appearances, or work with the book itself. There are other income streams that have shown up that we weren't expecting, that we always thought would just be so set it needed to look this way. And so that's been a wonderful surprise, and being open to, well, where else is there money that's ready to come in? Because the truth is, it's out there if you're open to doing it and finding different ways to make it happen.
Yes.
But even in Enneagram 1 through 9, it's never comfortable when you get to a point where you've made the money and now the money's going out and not coming in. You have to reward yourself. And I don't know, I still struggle with that today, is how do you now go enjoy the money you've spent so hard working for and enjoy it? Sometimes it's a proactive thing to do. I get it. And by the way, I love the Disney magic. We had more fun with our family with that.
It is that mindset though of, Jody's giving me great little things. Don't you? What is it you like to hit me on when I'm like going, oh my God, look at this bill. Look at it. She goes, isn't it nice we have it to spend? Isn't it nice that I was just like, yeah, you're right. Or, it's just that because I am an accumulator. So anything going on, I mean, it's not even just money. It's just like almost anything. It's just like, it's tough for me to just, I like to get it. I don't really like giving it away or getting rid of it. So it's been a healthy exercise for me to continuously be in that space of, yeah, it's all good. This is all a part of it. This is great, but again, that goes into that understanding different types and growing up. And part of our book is that things we wish we'd known. Like we end every chapter with basically lessons learned from that period in our life, where we go, things we wish we had known, and we throw things in there like Enneagrams or your different archetypes. We go, I wish I'd known this about myself at 25. This is how I process, as opposed to this is how she processes. I would have been much more understanding, or she would have been much more understanding, those kind of things. So, but it's funny. It's a funny evolution.
I love it. I got a buddy of mine when I got married 30 years ago. My bachelor friends, half were married, the other half were not. And the ones who were not, one who had been divorced 3 times, goes, Duncan, let me give you a piece of advice. If I'd realized the problem with my first 2 marriages was me, I never would have gotten divorced in the first place. So it's great to be able to learn as you go through life, and it takes a lot of patience. So here's one thing I like about you, and we're going to go there because your podcast and your book says we go there. Let's talk about intimacy and companionship. Intimacy evolves over long-term marriages, and how do you, when you're getting to our ages, we've been together forever, how do couples keep that connection and intimacy alive? Jody, let's start with you, because I know where Reg is going to go.
Well, for me, it is knowing each other, right? And him understanding that, going back to things like people's love languages, which I know kind of gets thrown around as kind of silly, but it really does. When he's speaking my love language and doing the laundry, acts of service is my love language. That lets me know that he sees me, he cares about me, he cares about my time, not just about physical intimacy, but he cares about me. And for an individual who that is their love language, then it's like an all day thing. I mean, for most women, I think it's an all day conversation that is ongoing. And so now that we have more time together, it also though opens up windows of time that we could exactly go out and have lunch together and have or just be together, and spend time that isn't just needing to be so, I don't know, it creates so much more spaciousness for the time that we have together. And so being though with that spaciousness, also being clear, like, what do we want to do with that time? And whether it's that we're spending time on doing a date night, or being able to do a weekend away, or getting to see some of the places we hadn't seen together. But for me, all of that goes into where the level of intimacy continues and continues to grow, and the conversations continue to go. And so it's not just about sex, it's about that deeper connection. And we're in a space where we get to do that even more in this time and space together. So it's really, what do we want to create from it? And I think it's actually been a really fun time to be able to have greater connection time and have greater intimacy, because he's around. He's not on the other side of the world in the military, gone. So,
Well, love languages are important, and I'd encourage people who haven't read the book, and now I'm drawing a blank. Jody, help me if you remember the name. But love languages are important things. Jody was talking about acts of service and how Reg shows love for her is doing chores around the house. I'm one of quality time. That's my love language. So if I can spend quality time with my wife, that's huge for her. And my wife's love language is words of affirmation, which are so important to her. And if you learn these things earlier in marriage than later in life, but if you haven't, you can always teach old dogs new tricks. These are all important. Reg, give me some words of advice here. Intimacy as we get older.
Yeah, I would tell you, unfortunately, I think for a lot of men, and I won't say most, I'll just say for a lot of men, I think we come into the whole intimacy thing. We don't understand anything about. Yeah, I tell people all the time, you can ask me about dudes. I can tell you anything and everything. I've been showering with them since I was 2 years old. I know men. I have two sisters, a mom, tons of female cousins, 3 girls, daughters. Or I still can't tell you about women. They are the most confusing, because it's just, it takes energy and effort to truly learn what gets them and makes them tick and what goes on. And it's so different than how us dudes do things, most, I would say. So I would tell you, the part for me that I've learned over the years is really understanding what she needs. Because I think, oh yeah, I bought her flowers and a box of chocolate, she should be ready to go. She's going, meanwhile, it's like, there's clothes all over the place. You didn't take the car to the shop like you said you're going. You told me you were going to wash my car. You're going to do it. It's like, but I brought you flowers and candy. You should be ready to go. So, it's those lessons of understanding what is it that really helps them to get to that level where intimacy is what they're, it gets them in the mood, for lack of a better word. But it's those things that, we kind of make, men in general make very basic. It's not. And it can be just the simplest thing of just, closing the refrigerator door outside when I go grab something out of the garage refrigerator, and not the 15th time she's looked out and it's at 80 degrees because the door's been cracked for the last 2 hours because I went out there and grabbed some. But, it's those little things, and then taking the time to, make sure you're kind of working down that line and working down that road of going, okay, this is what she, really understanding and taking the time to understand what she needs in order to be in a space where she is receptive and wants that, where, like us, I feel like Jody can just say, hey, I'm kind of in the mood. I'm like, okay, let's go. What do I need to do? I'm here. For her, it may take a little bit more, but you have to learn those things But more importantly, you have to have, again, back to that curiosity. What is it? And then, okay, I got it. Now let's move forward with that knowledge, but wanting that knowledge and going out and seeking that out. So I'll tell you, the intimacy for us, as we've gotten older or more experienced, never older, just more experienced. As we got more experience, I would tell you, for me, has been learning those lessons of going, this is what it means. This is what it takes. This is what she needs to feel seen. And for Jody, I'll speak to her. That's the one woman I kind of know. Feeling seen and heard are so very important. And that's those things you do that shows that she's seen and heard that helps with the whole intimacy side.
I'm dumbfounded. Words of wisdom. So, as we're wrapping up here, I'd love for you to wax philosophically with me. What does higher love, quote unquote, look like in retirement phase of marriage?
I would say higher love looks like understanding and deciding that we are together because, again, we choose to be together. And also, this together is we're looking at creating not just better for each other, but for our families and for our community. And like our love and the truth of our love and the reality of our love is actually a really great thing for this planet. And couples who take the time to really pour into each other, that pours into their families, these little ripples continue out and around us. And in a time when we often feel like, what can we do to make this world a better place? It starts right here. It starts right within ourselves and within our partnership and within our family. And that energy of how we respond to each other, how we take time to see each other, how we take time to forgive each other and care for each other will continue to grow and expand and expand. And so that's sort of that understanding of it's all right there within your own home, whether you are with a partner or with not, you can actually just create that spaciousness and that love. And it does make a big difference as we continue to move through this world together.
Yep.
A ripple effect that keeps going in our kids. You're teaching good lessons. Your kids now minimize the dysfunction they've got from their previous generations, and the happier marriages, you're really a multiplier effect for the world. You are making the world a better place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So tell us where the listeners can go to, one, get your book, and then where do they go to listen to your podcast so they continue to get this great wisdom that you've given us today?
Absolutely. Well, we're on Amazon. Our book is on Amazon, Choosing Each Other Every Day. That's the easiest way you can find us. Barnes & Noble also has us online. Barnes & Noble, again, Choosing Each Other Every Day. And then our podcast, we're on Spotify, Apple, Google, kind of all the major streaming podcast sites. And Higher Love is where you can find us there. I'm on Facebook. Reggie's not really on social media. Well, he's on LinkedIn. But Jody Howard, you can also find me on Facebook, and you can find him on LinkedIn if you're interested in that. And I'm also on Instagram if you want to find me there.
Yeah.
That is awesome. The two of you have been so great today. Thank you so much for being on the show. Our people in retirement need so many of these skills that we have, and we touched on so many different areas that are healthy to the marriage, whether they be enneagrams and understanding that, love languages, things that I think people can explore, but I think they can continue getting good wisdom from podcasts like yours, books like you've written, and so we can all live happily ever after, which is really the goal of our life, is to live happily ever after with the one you love. Thank you guys so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Duncan. Great time. Appreciate you.